Hi there. Today we're going to learn about APIs. So you might have heard about secret handshakes between friends. An API is like a secret handshake between two computer programs. Now you might think of a computer program as just something running on your computer, but anything on the web is also a computer program, like Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, or any website for that matter has a program behind it. So with an API, computer programs are allowed to talk to each other and share information through that API. So here we have a Python example with 3 lines of code. And let's say you want to know the weather. So what you do is import a requests module. Then you get data from that web URL from that API. See API here on the openweathermap.org. Then it gets a response, and when you output that response, you know the current weather for, in this case, London, UK, was inside that link. So that is an example of how you can use an API. So why would you use an API? Well, you want to communicate with many things on the internet. It can be social media or anything else, or even another computer program. Then when you have an API, you can access all of its functionality without having to worry about all kind of other complexities. You can just worry about your program. So let me give you an example. Let's say you want to make a new video game, and the video game needs to know the information about the current weather. Well, you could try to write code that contacts the weather station, and then inside the weather station convert from Fahrenheit to Celsius or vice versa, and check the units and check the geolocation and all that. But that quickly gets very complicated. And so what you could do instead is communicate with an API. That's an API that is like a software running somewhere that you can communicate with, and then through that communication you can then access whatever information you need from other software programs. So it makes it a lot easier when you use APIs. APIs are also used in social media. So all of these social medias have a different API, for example Reddit, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and any social media network you can think of. And they have an API. For example, you can use an API to post a message on Twitter from a computer program, from a Python program. You can do the same thing for Reddit, so you can post something to Reddit using the Reddit API. And so it's like the connector between your program and the social media network is the API. So you can think of it like a connector or a secret handshake that lets you communicate with those software platforms. So by using the API, you can easily share information to the other platforms and get information and do all kind of functions. So there's a lot of functions available on and they're different on every platform. For example, posting on Reddit, posting on Twitter. But on Reddit, for example, you can also get information from a subreddit, which is specific for that platform. But you can access all of the publicly available functions, and you can use that to create your bots. Now, APIs are not only used in social networks, so they're used in many different websites, and also outside of websites they are used. For example, they can be used for certain electronics or other things. So in summary, APIs are like secret handshakes or connectors between two computer programs, and they are created because, or you can use them because it makes it easy to let them share information and talk to each other. Without an API, writing software would become very complicated because you don't have any way that the components communicate with each other. So you might have to write the whole program itself or do all kind of network codes, and it gets very complicated. And an API is just very easy. You just call the function that you want. As you saw in the code example, just one line of code that says, okay, this link gets the weather from London, UK, and it returns the information directly. You don't have to write any weather station code. So APIs make it easy for applications to talk to each other, to share information, and also to call remote functionality. And that's why we use APIs. They just make it easy for different computer programs to work together and share information. And there's basically no reason not to use an API. And sometimes there's no API available. In such a case, it gets very hackish. Maybe you need to start a web browser, and then you need to use the code to control the web browser, to get information and to click with the mouse on all kind of locations. So it's a very tedious process. You can do that with Python Selenium that I have a course about on this platform. But the most easy way to make two programs talk to each other, for example, your program and talk to a weather station, talk to the weather API, or your program and talk to the Reddit API to talk with that social media platform, is through the API. If you don't use an API, it just gets very, very hackish. It's possible, it's a lot of fun, but when you want to make quick programs, then it just takes a lot of time. For example, you can use Selenium to do all of that website automation, and you can basically automate anything, but it's a more time-consuming process. And using an API is just very easy. There's just certain commands that you can communicate with. They're all web commands. For example, here you see a web URL. You recognize maybe the HTTP slash that is always used in websites. So basically you have web addresses that you can communicate with, and they return data that you want. In this case, London, UK is in the web link. And then you get a response. Now, most APIs, they also use an API key to access their API. So there might be just public calls, so without API key. But for most actions, like in Twitter posting a tweet, or on Reddit posting a new Reddit post, or any other social media action, they most likely use an API key, which you need to get to interact with the API